Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Ryan and Rush Show. On today's episode, we have West Virginia legend Jay Jacobs on to discuss his playing career with Jerry West, his broadcasting career, funny stories, and a whole lot more. All ahead on the Ryan and Rush Show. And we welcome you back to your source for West Virginia sports. I'm Rambling Rush. He's Moneyline Mac. We are the Ryan and Rush Show, and we're getting right into it with a very special guest, Jay Jacobs. Jay, how are you doing today?
Good, Rush. Doing very well.
Thank you so much for coming on. I know we talked about this for a little while. The craziness of basketball season has finally simmered down, even though there's a lot of transfer portal stuff going on. Just wanted to ask you right off the bat, it was a good season for the Mountaineers to return to the tournament. What did you think of this past season's team?
Well, I think it was up and down during the course of the year. We had some good things happen. We had some bad things happen. We had a bad stretch where we lost games rush in a row, couldn't figure out what was going on. Then we started to piece some things together. And I think through it all, a guy by the name of Kedrian Johnson, the point guard, kept us on focus as best he could. And then we had ups and downs from Trey Mitchell and then Eric Stevenson. Well, you know Eric. He's just Eric.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to describe Eric. Eric's Eric, and I completely agree with you, Jay, that we're going to miss Keedy so much. We'll dive right into the current team. Obviously, the staff has been very busy with the transfer portal. Again, to Kirk Krisha, obviously Jose Perez, Omar Silvero, and then obviously they're bringing over Jesse Edwards from Syracuse, and then Battle from Montana State. What do you think of the Mountaineers so far in the transfer portal? Obviously, they've been very busy.
Well, you wonder everything you look at it, Ryan. You look at the guys like her. You think of them, you say, oh, boy, they're going to be offensive fixes right away. But I worry how they're going to all mix in because Bob Huggins is a defensive coach. Now, we know that Hugs is a guy that can just is able to put people together, throw them in a mix, and it all comes out right. But we'll see what he does this year. But I think defense will be the key this year.
Usually is with Coach Huggins. And what's amazing about this West Virginia program, right, is that, you know, people love football, people love baseball, but West Virginia is a basketball school. You know, Huggins has been a big part of that in the modern day. But to take it before, when it really solidified itself as being a basketball school, you were part of those teams that went to the national championship. But that even began before you were in Morgantown High School. You're from Morgantown, West Virginia. Talk about what it was like playing Morgantown ball, playing against Jerry West at East Bank.
Well, I'll tell you, let's start way back at Morgantown High because I played under fancy banking boards. You think they weren't tough to handle. Hard to make a bank shot out of that. My favorite shooter at all time was a guy by the name of Charlie Huggins. Bob Huggins was his dad. And what a shooter he was at Morgantown High. Left-handed, carried a toothpick in his mouth all the time. That was the call for Hugs, Hugs Sr. So I think that we went through Morgantown High School. I enjoyed it a lot. I was a guy that could shoot the ball. Didn't like defense, didn't know what it was, couldn't spell it. And so I didn't even worry about it. But our team was very, very good. We had a team that went to the state championship and played against a guy named Jerry West. Now, I remember in the locker room before the game going out against West, you two guys will remember maybe a little bit about this, but you know West. And I remember our coach, Jack Roberts, coming in and said, guys, don't worry about a thing. One guy can't beat five. Well, you know, I love Jack Roberts. He was one of my great idols of all time, but he was wrong. West had 38 got out in the third quarter. So, and we still couldn't find him. He just had those long, lanky arms. And Jerry was a guy that was, you know, he was just, I don't want to say insecure, but we played in the North-South game together. I got to know he and Willie Akers and everybody, and we got to know those teams. And Fred came down and recruited us all. We're all West Virginia kids. Butch Good, who died way too early in life. These guys were all guys that came to West Virginia. We all went in together. We played a freshman schedule. It had 36 games. The freshmen weren't eligible. And I remember a couple good stories. We were over to High U one time, and the game started the first 7 shots, 2-hand set shots. And I made 5 of them. So all of a sudden there's a timeout. So I walked over and I thought to myself, walking over to the bench, who in the hell called timeout? So Quentin Barnett, I looked at him, our coach, he said, I didn't call timeout. Finally, Jerry raised his hand, said, I did. We're either going to get another ball for us to play with and let Jacobs play with the one he's got, or else we're all going to share the same ball. And that ended up being a great story. So I learned from the great Jerry West.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's the logo for a reason. I'm sure you could talk about Jerry for days and days and days. Obviously, you guys played together at West Virginia University, but I don't think people realize after you got done playing, you got into the coaching industry. And I know you and Hugs like to jab at each other on the Bob Huggins radio show about how good a coach you were. Tell us about your administrative and coaching career up in Maryland.
I went to Bedwood Union High School outside of Wheeling, right below South Wheeling. And I started out there, and I had a good team, a solid team, but it was young. And what happened was we went through the regional tournament and got beat there. But then they announced in that county that they were going to have a new school, and out of the 5 schools, they weren't going to hire any of the coaches that were head coaches there now, which I think ended up being a good plan because nobody then could complain about anything. So I decided then, my wife and I, hey, we had just adopted our daughter, and we thought, well, I'll try someplace else. So I had played against a guy by the name of Roy Comer, was coaching at Martinsburg High School, and he had moved on to Frederick, and there he was the head of physical education. Well, he brought me into Frederick, and I remember the principal asked me a question. He said, do you have a coaching philosophy for blacks? And I said, no, sir, I don't, because I only have one coaching, and that's just coach them all. So I said, I'm not getting that job because that question wasn't going to make it. So I got back home in Morgantown. Maybe 3-4 days later, a call came, and I got the job. So I went down to it was 3,000 kids in the school, and I had a lot of black kids, and we were very, very good. And so I liked that a lot. Then I had a chance to go into administration. Went into administration. I had a choice, either teaching or staying in administration. I took administration, but it really ended up being the right thing because it opened the door for me to get into television. And so since then, I've been 49 years. I'm coming on my 50th year doing radio and television. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome. It's a great story to stick to you. Let me ask you, Jay, is when you look back at your coaching or even being in administration, is there maybe not a best player, maybe not your most valuable player, but maybe just someone that came across, a kid that came across you in your life that just always left a special impact on you, that when you kind of think back at that time, you always maybe think about someone because of a weird situation they were in and you help coach them out of it? Do you have anyone like that in your life that you came across?
Well, there's really 2 of them, Rush, I think. One of them, it was up in Moundsville and up in that area. I had a kid by the name of Jimmy Poli. In fact, he just passed away this last week. He was a 9th grader, and I started him as a freshman. And he was playing with seniors, which was very, very hard to do because they didn't take a liking to him at the beginning. But he became a guy just molded in, became a very good player for me through the 4 years I had him. The other one's a kid named Ernie Bowens down here in Frederick, Maryland, where I live now, and at Thomas Johnson. And he was a kid that could do almost anything. He could throw a football 60 yards. He could run the 200 in really fast speed. And but he was a great basketball player. and we used the press a lot that I'd gotten from Fred Schaus of West Virginia. So we used all their presses, and we sort of took teams by surprise down here. They weren't ready for it. But I do know that in the area where we were, guys just came along. But I learned one thing, and from a guy that Ryan knows pretty well, a guy by the name of Ryan, a guy by the name of Javon Carter, who's now with the Milwaukee Bucks. He told me one day, he said, Jay, I want to tell you something. When I'm practicing with the Bucks or where I'm practicing, if I get done practicing, I practice longer. Because if the longer I practice, the better I get. The better I get, the more confidence I get. And so I always remembered that with Javon, because what a guy he was and still is. And he's a fine basketball player in the pros. So that's sort of guys that I remember. There's probably other ones too that I knew that were very, very good. But Rush, that's two that stand out to me.
Hello, Rambling Rush here, and we'll take you back to your episode momentarily. The Ryan and Rush Show is on its way to monetization, and we need your help. Please subscribe to our show if you haven't yet, and let your friends know all about it. The Ryan and Rush Show is your source for West Virginia sports, and our goal is to make this our full-time job and to give you the best news and analysis available. Again, that's the Ryan and Rush Show. Please subscribe today and share with all your friends. Now back to the episode. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
JC's taught a lot of guys lessons, especially with his work ethic, that he takes what West Virginia basketball was to the next level, and that's why he's been able to get to that second and third contract, and he's going to be a pro for as long as he wants to do it, just because if he's a true professional in the way he does it. So let me ask you this. We've talked about your playing career, your coaching career, your administrative career. Now everybody nowadays knows you as the announcer in your announcing career, which you got going in the 70s. Obviously, you and Tony have been doing it forever. You both are icons in the state of West Virginia athletics. Talk about your relationship with Tony and just your relationship of how it's evolved over the years, some stuff that maybe the general person doesn't know about you and the voice of the Mountaineers.
Well, I'll tell you what, with Tony, it's a funny story how we ever got together, because we got together for our first game in Madison Square Garden, because Jack Fleming, I was working with Jack, and the true voice of the Mountaineers, and he had high blood pressure spike up on him up in New York. So Mike Parson, our head guy and really a sharp, sharp guy, he turned down and called Morgantown and got Tony on a plane up. So Tony and I did the first game, and I believe it was in the 70s, and we've been together ever since. But Tony is such a professional. He worries about me all the time, especially on that show, because they don't know what I'm going to say, and I don't know what the hell I'm going to say. So that makes it fun. And then Hugs and I get into it all the time, and we go back and forth, and that's what makes this show one of the popular ones. But as far as Tony and I, what a wonderful, wonderful. But as good a broadcaster as he is, Ryan, he's even a better writer. He can write like you would not believe. Yeah. And I think that's a true gift that he has.
That's really cool. Yeah, Tony's been very supportive in our work, Jay. He's someone that when Ryan was still into coaching, he had me reach out because I was looking to podcasting and looking into getting into this realm of things.
Did Ryan tell you, hey, Rush?
Yes.
Did Ryan tell you he was in coaching? He told you he was in coaching? He told you that?
I knew he was. I knew it.
I was doing something along the lines of
there you go. Coach Mac. Well, we've called him Coach Mac since the high school days. Ryan and I grew up together, and we've always known his nickname was always Coach Mac. So Ryan's a whether video coordinator, coach, he's coach. But yeah,
Tony along the lines of that.
There we go. But Tony he was very invited me over to the studio, filmed one of the shows, and just it's amazing how he will just sit down and just help anyone out on any level. It was definitely cool to see you share a similar experience. But let me kind of ask you something similar that we've asked Tony before, or at least I have asked Tony, was as someone who's, we're professionals right now trying to kind of break into the media industry, and I know it's a lot different than it was, maybe in the 70s, but what advice would you have for people like us that want to get into broadcasting, that want to be in long form media, podcasting media? What would you tell us?
Rush, I would think never give up, because I've come across some people, as Tony has too, and he would tell them the same thing. You keep plugging at it. You keep going at it as hard as you can. And don't think that you guys are going to start right out. I was blessed because I got to go right away with Jack Fleming, and I worked TV with Jack and with a guy named Woody O'Hara. And so I had these things all the time, but I was gifted. I never had to start out low. And as an analyst, I learned from anybody that I could. So don't think you know more than anybody else, and just plug away and plug away. And guys like you two are going to make it because you have that desire and that attitude to do it. And that's a big, big part of it.
Keep practicing like Javon Carter, right?
Yeah, that's right. Stay like JC.
There we
exactly. Go. Hey, so let me transition into this next segment, which I'll call it the greatest of all time or favorite of all time. And we'll just fire away some questions because you've seen so many games, been a part of so many great games over the years. Who is the best player? We'll go non-West Virginia. Who's the best player that you've seen West Virginia play against in person on the sidelines?
You guys are going to know this guy. Seth Curry was one of the best when he was down at Davidson. Yeah. We played him in the Garden. I'm telling you, and now he is so much better. I've never seen anybody now, and you guys will probably agree, but you can jump in here if you don't, with ball handling skills and shooting skills in one body. I mean, he really has a quick release, and when he's dedicated, and he's got a fireball in his mind, because he really, in that game the other night, he just willed his team. He said, we're not losing. And he just wouldn't let them lose. No. He ran for 50. And I think that when you have guys like that, there's a lot of other ones. I saw Gary Trent play at Ohio U and come in against he came in against Sheldon Jefferson in the Coliseum. And they exchanged basket after basket after basket. And then, of course, the great games that we saw all along the line from out in Cleveland when Mike Gansey ran for 25 points in overtime. That types of games were great against Wake Forest and Chris Paul. And then, of course, a great game out when we beat Catlett. I love to talk to Gail about that. I mean, I love to talk about Hugs about that. Excuse me, Gail, because you were on the winning side. Hugs was on the losing side. And Hugs said if he'd had 2 more seconds, bull crap, he wouldn't have been able to do it. We just had too much going in that one.
Yeah, that was the Jared West Bank game.
Yeah, it was the Jared West Bank game, and it tipped off of somebody. That's it. Hug said that's the only reason it happened. But I remember he said he went into the dressing room and a guy by the name of Bob Goins was in there. But I'll tell you what happened, how we won that game. He didn't have a point guard, and I told him that. He had a kid named Horton at the point guard, and we just ate him up. They weren't good enough right there.
So that gets me to my next question. Don't bring that game up around Hugs, by the way. Anybody listening to this, when you watch this, that's his least favorite game of all time.
I'm glad he can't hear this one.
Who best team West Virginia has ever played that you've announced?
Oh boy,
there's been some good ones in the Big East, Big 12, the Kansas teams, the UConn teams, Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky, UConn. Those are all teams, but finding a big one, that's hard to do, Ryan, because I'm not sure that I would do anybody justice. The best game I ever saw was our NCAA final in Louisville, Kentucky in 1956 or 57-58. We were down there and we lost it to California with Darrell Hamoff in the last second. But if we'd have had 10 more seconds of that one, Jerry would have willed that one to win. That's for sure. But as far as games I've seen, great games in the Big East and the Garden. Pitt teams were good. They were very, very good. I don't know. You had teams like Connecticut. And when we beat Connecticut with Joe Alexander there in that tournament, that was huge because they had great players. And, of course, Ray Allen was tremendous. Those guys were really good.
Yeah, and then you didn't even mention all these good Big 12 teams like Kansas with Embiid and Wiggins on the same team.
No, I didn't. Like like Kansas, tremendous teams. And Baylor was good recently, but boy, Kansas has just been good every year. Bill Self just keeps bringing them on and bringing them on.
Especially in that building. I mean, we all know they're
yeah.
unbeatable, whether it's 5-on-5 or 8-on-5.
Well, I heard you could sing Chalk Talk, can you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far. So I refuse to sing that stupid song.
Me too. I can't.
That usually when you hear that, you're headed into the visitor locker room taking an L. So there's been plenty that have paid heed to the fog, as they say.
But you know, Ryan, we've had good success against Kansas at home now.
Mm-hmm.
We have.
We played pretty good against them at home. We've beaten them sometimes we weren't supposed to.
Yeah, and that gets me to my next one. What's your favorite West Virginia team over the years as an announcer that you've announced for a whole season? Just favorite team came together. I mean, obviously, probably 2010 stands out.
Yeah, 2010 just jumps right out at me because of the way we did it. We weren't that good. We were okay through the season. Then we went into Philadelphia, played Villanova, and Butler played well. And Ebanks then started to play very well. And of course, crazy Joe Mazzulla. And we went into the tournament and he just took us. And then we beat Kentucky at Syracuse that year.
And what about your favorite game? What's your all-time favorite game that you've announced?
Probably the one in Cleveland. And we've had a lot of them. The one with that I talked about earlier about being down against and being undermanned against
Chris Paul,
Wake Forest, and then coming on and beating them. Yeah, that was really good basketball. And Gansey was tremendous. And I remember Gansey used to sit, Ryan. He would sit in the ice tub because he before every game, especially as a senior, he just iced himself down, and he just really became a heck of a player. Because remember, he came to West Virginia with under Beeline, and when Beeline was there, Mike had to sit out for a year, and he said he learned a lot there, and I think he really did. But there have been other games too.
Speaking of games and kind of where the college scene is headed, Jay, with especially NIL and transfer portal. One, what do you think of the NIL and transfer portal, and what do you think has been kind of an immediate consequence of these systems being in place, and where do you think it's going?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rush, with me, and Ryan will probably know because he was at the tail end of this, but when this portal came in, Bob Huggins couldn't stand it. And he would get on the show and preach against it every Thursday night. I'm not doing that. I'm going out. I'm going to get freshmen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have them for 4 years. And then all of a sudden, he found out that it was hard for him to win. It was hard for him because he was playing again. He was trying to play freshman sophomores against 5-year guys. And the portal this year, I think he outdid himself. I think he got guys we don't know how they're going to play together, but we know that those 5 guys that he has coming in now, I saw the other day, they have played between 95 and 125 or 35 games before they even get here. So they're going to be well schooled. Nice. That's what leads to me to the thing about the defense. If they're not defensive minded after playing 125 games, how are they going to be defensive minded? Can Huggs get this done? So that's where it is. But he has a good point guard. He has some good backups. I was going to ask you guys, what do you think, Ryan, about the backups of now? If you start the 5 guys that he brings in, and that's these portal starters, what do you think about these backup guys? Who backs up the point guard? Who backs up the 2 guard? Who backs those guys up? Do we have guys on that team now that can do that and are willing to do it?
Yeah, I think that's where, yes, I think we all get caught up in the transfer portal of, hey, it's basically free agency, but you got to have a fine balance of being able to retain your roster, keep guys like Joe Toussaint, Trey Mitchell, Seth Wilson, Kobe Johnson in your program. Like, yeah, UConn and Miami went to the Final Four, and they went into the portal and got some guys, but they also retained their main core and added pieces. Kind of like professionally when these teams will have their core, go through the battles, and then they'll add a key free agent in the offseason to put them over the top. So I think I think everybody will buy in eventually. I mean, that's why Huggs has got 900 plus wins and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to get them to defend, or he's going to lose his mind, as we know better than anybody. So, yeah, I think that they have enough guys, and I think they got 2 of everything. So that's a positive. We saw that with UConn being as deep as they were, and sometimes Sonogo, it wasn't Sonogo's night, it was Klingen's night, or Hawkins didn't have it. So the other guards or perimeter guys had it going that night. So I think being able to be deep, because Huggs' best teams are 10, 11 deep. I mean, you think about the Press Virginia teams, we would wear you down 1 through 11, 1 through 12, because maybe our 1 through 5 wasn't better than your 1 through 5, but our 1 through 11 and 1 through 12 was going to outlast you, kind of like the Kansas teams that you touched on at the Coliseum.
Well, I think one thing is also to you two guys, the fact that the bench is so important the way Huggs plays. Mm-hmm. Now, he hasn't been able to press. Everybody wants to know where's Press Virginia, where it is. He just hasn't had Javon Carter. He hasn't had Dax Miles. He hasn't had those guys that really jump in your grill. He's tried to do it, and he's worked on it every year. We're over there at practice. You've seen it. But I just think right now, he just hasn't been able to do it. So I think he stepped away from that right now. And I talked to Jay Kuntz's secretary the other day, Ronnie Everhart, and we were talking about some things. So I was just wondering how Ronnie felt about this.
That's great. And for those watching, we have a long friendship. Me, Jay, Ronnie, always cherished our conversations at the breakfast table, pregame meal. Sometimes we would almost miss the bus because we'd be talking there at the pregame meal so long. That's so shout out to Ronnie. He's gonna have some words for you with that comment there.
Yeah, he probably will. So anyway, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, because I think people know you from just the guy that does the radio show and the games. I don't think people realize how good a friendship you have with those guys in that building. There's some really good guys. Obviously, you and Huggs aren't just doing a show every Thursday night. You guys talk all the time. You guys have a friendship that goes way beyond just 15 years of him being at West Virginia. You got good guys in that program like Josh Eilert that have been there forever. The Brian Messer leads in the sports information department. Ronnie Everhart, you already talked about. Just touch on some of the relationships that you've built over the Huggs era, because he's been there. I mean, it's hard to believe that he's going to be entering, what is it, year 17 or 18 now?
Yeah.
It seems like yesterday he just took the job.
Yeah, that's right. You're exactly right. That's a good point. And I think with me, with Huggs, I go back because I was the first game one of the years in 1974. He was playing at West Virginia, and he's not as good as he says he is on the show. I want you guys to know that. He's not that good. He says he's good, but he wasn't that good. And I think one of the things that happens is that we have become friends. And that show where I am now, I'm in my 49. I'm going into my 50th year. Who knows beyond that? At 84 years old, I'll be 85 next year. No, wait a minute. I'll be 83. I go backwards. At 84, I start backwards. But anyway,
COVID year.
The other guys in that department, Tyler Chang, Jared Fortson, who took your job when you were there. Those guys are unbelievable. And what they've done is, and Trent Michaels, those guys are just unbelievable. And a lot of them Huggs has kept on board because they are so good. And I worked with 2 guys this year, a guy by the name of Tyler Milchman. You remember him?
Yeah,
Milchman,
head manager.
Yeah, and he is so what a guy he is, and a guy by the name of Bryce O'Leary.
Yep,
Bryce from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. He's still looking for that muskrat or whatever the hell it is up there. I'm not sure what it is. Whatever it is, he still goes up there every day, tries to find it, and all he sees is his shadow, which is stupid. So anyway, I regress. But those guys are in the department. Josh Aller, you mentioned, And DeMar Johnson right now, I'm telling you, he's going to be a good one. And Hugs is bringing him along. And you weren't there this past year, Ryan, but a guy who came on strong, was Alex Ruoff. He really came on. Yeah, he just came on good.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned a guy like Ruoff because we've seen so many now success stories. Like you're just talking about the guys that Hugs has retained recently, but you look at the guys that came before this group of head managers, the Milchmans right now. You look at James Herring at Radford, Ben Asher at Youngstown State. You look at Jared Calhoun, who's the head coach at Youngstown. Joe Mazzulla is the head coach of the Boston Celtics. You ever think you'd be saying that? Mike Gansey is the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, I mean, there's so many success stories that have come through that West Virginia basketball program over the last 17 years that I don't even think our fan base realizes how many success stories. I mean, Justin Dapolito, he's the head social media guy for the NBA right now. Where everything that goes on social media goes through him. He's getting married next month to another West Virginia grad, Sam, who worked for Brian Messerly. Yep.
Who's he going to marry? That blonde?
Yeah.
Finally?
Yes, Sam. Yeah. June the 2nd.
Yeah, well, he's chased her for a long time, so I'm glad he finally caught her.
She worked for Brian Messerly.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Yes. Where is she now? Is she up and around him? I'm sure she is.
Yeah, they're getting married in Maryland. So I think they're in the New York, Jersey area, but her family's from the Annapolis type area. And then obviously Guidi, as we call him, is a New Jersey guy.
Yeah, he's something else, isn't he? Those guys are all good guys. How about Peyton?
Peyton Stern.
Peyton Stern, and he got him a little touch of coaching with James Long, and so is Peyton still down in Beckley?
Yep, he's at West Virginia Tech. James just took a high school job or prep school job. He's over there at the court 14, I think is what it's called there in the Charlotte area. So just so many success stories that have come, and obviously there's one common denominator, and that's Hugs and the coaching staff that over these 15 plus years that has taken everybody in, and you just let people grow and give them more and more, and people are hungry, and it gets passed along, and it's a culture. So it's been very, very good under Hugs.
What's your reading, you two guys, on the portal guys we have coming in, like Edwards? Going to be a good one?
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason he was the top 3 in the portal. I think it goes back to, I think we all agreed there's a lot of great players coming in, players that are able to take us to that next level where, the floor anywhere between the Sweet 16 and Final Four, we are capable. We do have that talent. It's what we talked about earlier is, one, how are they going to mesh together? Because this is a team sport. And two, it's like you said, when you have a lot of offensive guys coming in and then someone that's philosophy is defense, how are they going to adjust to that? So if they come together, mesh well, and kind of like what we saw this team this past year, right? It took a second, but once you better late than never, kind of take off type of thing. And make sure you defend the rim. You take care of those two things. I don't see any reason why they can't be as successful as they want to.
Rush and Ryan, I was talking to a guy by the name of Joe Lambiot, who used to coach at Fairmont State, and he comes to a lot of practices. And he was called me the other day and told me that there was a practice that went for an hour and a half, and Seth Wilson did not miss one shot. So I think he's going to be a big help. If he buys in to backing up Battle at the 2 guard, that Battle's 6'5", isn't he? I think he is.
Yeah, he's tall.
I saw him against K-State in the NCAA tournament. He hit 37. So
he
can Big 12 tested.
But those guys got him in there. Who got him in there? Emmett Matthews, who's been a great ambassador. So has what's we call McBride? Not McBride, but
Jordan McCabe.
Jordan McCabe, yeah.
Yep.
Those guys have helped. So those guys have been really good in getting players in. And it seems like Hugs has this knack, guys, of people who play for him never forget him. They're always looking out for players. They wanted to send him to Hugs. Hugs will fool you, I think. And Ryan, you know this by every day of practice. and Rush and I see him some of the times. But I just thought that Hugs just knows how to handle people. And with these things like, remember old Truck Brian? I remember Truck. He would jump Truck's rear end constantly during practice. When practice was over, he'd have his arm around Truck going off the floor. That's so thing you can leave it on the floor. But some of the stuff that Hugs can say to you, you never forget it.
No doubt. Yeah, he's been so good to so many people over his 40-plus years of coaching. Let me ask you this, not to put you on the spot. I know you got a contract and you're obligated to what you're allowed to say. How much longer do you want to do the announcing thing, the announcing gig? I mean, I know that you don't travel as much as you do. I don't think people realize you live in Frederick, Maryland. That's not the easiest drive, especially in December, January, March, going up I-68 through the mountains with the ice and snow. So how much longer do you want to do it? Do you want to go out with Hugs, or you got a different plan?
Well, I think Hugs has plans to stay longer than me. Yeah. I really do. And the only thing that's going to chase him out, Ryan, is the fact that the portal and the NIL are, I think in the end, that'll be the things that'll get him in the end. They'll say he doesn't want to do this anymore because you have to answer to too many people. He doesn't like to answer to too many people. He likes to do it himself. And but he's very good at it. As far as I'm concerned, with me personally, I just take it a year at a time. I have what they call drop foot, which is ligaments in your left side of your foot that don't, so you have to slap down your foot to get any place whenever you step. And that's been a problem. And that's sort of taken off the road. Although this year, I did go to Portland, Oregon. Never saw so many homeless people in my life. Oh, my God. They crowded every coffee shop, every pizza place, every place. Yeah. You look out your window, and they're there in their tents right outside your hotel. We stayed in a nice hotel. But then I digressed there on that one, but we went to Kansas City and I did go out there for that one. But I have so many people, guys, that help me around, that take my luggage. I mean, Ronnie Everhart, Tyler Chang, Tony Creedy. These guys take care of my stuff. I take Ryan, you've been part of it. You take my stuff, the managers, they get my luggage. I don't see it till I get to my room. Now, nobody has that type of thing. That keeps you going for a while. But to all those people that I work with, I love them to death. And you're one of them, Ryan.
I appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
Jay, we really appreciate you coming on the show. And
you sure?
Yes. Oh, trust me. This has been one of the most fun shows I know I'm the screen. I'm kind of in the middle. This has been great. Like, I love absolutely bouncing off it and everything like that. But we appreciate it. And you've just been, before games, you're about to get in the zone, right? And me and Ryan have come up to you and been like, hey, and you drop everything you're doing to talk to us, to say hi to us, to see how you're doing. You really give back to this community and this program. And even not only this community, but clearly the Frederick, Maryland community, the whole West Virginia as a state. Something a question to start wrapping up here is, you talked about, Huggins staff and everyone there that supports you, whether they're taking bags up to your room or checking in on you or wherever that may be. And like you said, you brought up some health concerns and you're still kind of figuring out where you are, taking life day by day, year by year. Totally get that. But something I think a lot of people would love to know is, obviously we talked about the evolution of college basketball, but what about the evolution of the relationship of you and Coach Huggins? Clearly you guys love each other. Clearly you guys like to razz each other. But talk about your relationship with him and where it started and where it is now.
Well, it started way back when we were at West Virginia together, and I was starting out on radio and TV. He was doing the games. And that's what I told you, that people don't realize that he wasn't that good, as he says everybody that he is. But the thing about it is, Rush, what happens is that we have become friends. And one of the things that makes the show so popular, and Ryan's been to the show, and I think you have too, once or twice, Rush. But anyway, the show, he doesn't like to talk basketball. He doesn't like, he tells you right away. He rather talks about elevated commodes. I mean, one night we got on elevated toilets, and it went on for 35 minutes. We got more phone calls we never gotten. Some guy called from Tennessee. Yeah, just put those in. Yeah, I love that, Jay. We got those things that just and I didn't even know they were putting one in my house. And when I went to sit down, I yelled, Bonnie, my feet don't reach the floor. I said, we got to bring this thing down a little bit. I mean, it was crazy, but all the types of things that we talk about on there have been funny. But Hugs likes to get into it with me, and I think that's been part of it. But guys, that show has been sold out now. You just can't get in. If you don't call over there and get a reservation and get in there, you don't get in because of him. It's because of him. It's not because of me. It's because of him. They want to see him because he is so daggone honest in everything that he says.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, your guys' dynamic is second to none, and then Tony's the perfect middleman.
Oh, he worries about. He knows when we get going at each other. He knows when to. You're right, Ryan. When he knows when to pull in there and say, "Okay, that's enough. That's enough."
Commercial break.
Commercial break.
Take a break. That's enough.
Hey, Jacobs, we would it'd be a disservice if we did not ask about your better half as well. Obviously,
Absolutely.
we see so many coaches. It's tough on their relationships, their marriages, because they're always on the road. You being in the announcing industry, you're always on the road. Talk about Bonnie and how she's been so instrumental in your journey through all these years of West Virginia University.
Well, every Friday morning we have a coach's breakfast, which is the old retired coaches at a restaurant here in Frederick. And there's about 15 of us. And I told my group the other day, I don't ever remember, and this is the truth, guys, I don't ever remember her saying, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to do the game. I'd rather have you stay here. Never once has she ever not encouraged me. Until this day, she's still encouraging me. And that's one thing, because now a lot of people would take that a different way, because they would see, I got married on July 4th. Yeah. And I will be married 60 years this July 4th. Now, everybody gained their independence, and I lost mine. I understand that. I mean, I know what that is, but she has been terrific. She's just nothing. And we lost a daughter 8 years ago to cancer. And she left 3 kids behind, and she homeschooled all those kids. Those kids were tremendous. 2 of them graduated from college. The other one's well on his way. And, I mean, it's just been really hard on her. And that was Bonnie's best friend. So that part of my life has been tough. But I just am so thankful, because I have people. And in this industry, you guys know, the people you meet, it's so daggone important. Never forget them. Never forget them. Now, after this show's over, I'm going to try like hell to forget you guys. But with the rest of it, I'm going to try to stay with everything that I can. But no, you've been tremendous, and I thank you so much for having me on.
Jay, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And one final question before we let you get on your way is, because of how great of a life you lived, right? From being a basketball player, from being a coach, to an administrator, to calling basketball games, to developing these such great relationships. When you look back on all of that as a whole, all those 82 years of beautiful life, what do you want to be remembered for?
That's a good question. I just want to remember it as a guy who just was a guy that did games, who had fun, enjoyed. I want my epitaph to read, cause of death, life. That's what I want to read on my epitaph. Cause of death, life. Because I have enjoyed my life. I've been very spoiled. I've been a person who has taken advantage, not of people, but of some things that have come my way, and I made them work for me. But all in all, I've got the cleanest hands of an 84-year-old man ever in lifetime. I mean, my hands are so clean. I've never done anything with them. I can't stand to work. I can't stand to mow grass. At one time I liked to smoke it, but I didn't want to mow it. And so at other times we did some of that stuff, but really my personality has been my life. And I have so much fun being around guys like you. You keep me young.
Age is a number.
Age is a number. You're right, Rush. It is.
Absolutely. Well, Jay Jacobs, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute blast, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Rush. Thanks, Ryan. Always good to see you. Hey, I heard you were in Morgantown last week.
I made a pit stop.
Yeah, that's good
Yeah.
stuff, man. That's good. All right.
I owe you a visit at the bagel shop in
Oh,
Frederick.
you do. I'm always there. Count on me anytime. All right. You can always catch me there. Hey, guys, thanks.
Thank you. Have a
Love
good
you,
one.
brother. Go
Thanks.
Mountaineers.
See ya. Go Mountaineers.